You don't have to throw out what you know. You can enhance what you're already doing. Let's listen to Sean and Daniel today as I talk about Sean's experience, and he's got some great stories from both professionally and personally using Team CBT. Wish I could have been there. I had my wisdom teeth out and I was in recovery at the time. So enjoy. Welcome to Talking Team CBT, where you'll hear stories from therapists and clinicians around the world on their journey and experience with Team CBT.
All right, welcome everyone to another edition of Talking Team CBT with Angela Poach and myself, Daniel Herman. Without Angela today, but we're super excited to have a fantastic guest. We have Sean Williams with us, who is a licensed clinical social worker, level 3 team certified clinician with a part-time practice in Indiana. Also works at Ohio State University, focusing on research, particularly on military trauma and suicide. And we're just super excited to hear your story and get to know you today, Sean. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and we're gonna miss Angela. So.
Yeah, no, it won't be the same, but we'll have to make up for it somehow with some good stories or some other great tidbits. And I know you have a lot of that. I've had the great experience of training with you in so many different forums, and I've always appreciated your sense of like how to kind of like practice Team CBT and really like kind of like do it in a very concise way, and that really incorporates like the best elements of team, and being able to just make sure that Team CBT is kind of getting out there to the public, because it could be the best kept secret, and we want more people to know about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, maybe we could just kind of start a little bit and just start with that and tell us when and how you got involved with Team. I know it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, it was actually around 2008. My wife and I, we had moved to the Bay Area. She was pursuing her MBA, and I had actually just graduated from with my master's in social work. Right. And so when I was in the Bay Area, I was kind of looking for some kind of postgraduate advanced clinical trainings, and there were a lot of plenty of options like in the Bay Area, but at that time in the place that I was in, it wasn't quite affordable for me. And so for some reason, I kind of a light bulb all of a sudden went off in my head. And I remembered this book, which was actually one of my favorite books, was Feeling Good. And I remembered, I was like, wait a second, like in the beginning, it talked about him being like an adjunct, like professor at Stanford. Yeah. And then I started to, do a little bit of research, and I'm like, I wonder if he's still out here, and so I did some online research. I found his email address. I didn't know if it was still active or not, but I emailed him, and literally like the next morning, like he emailed me back, and I was I was in shock. And he was saying how actually, I do have some free trainings. I'll never forget this. I think he wrote in there, where I'm teaching students and mental health professionals across the Bay Area these kind of high speed, high powered, like, radical techniques. And, you're welcome to come to my house and learn these techniques. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I almost broke my neck, like typing back to,
I'll be there.
And literally, I think for the next 2 years, I don't think I missed like a Tuesday group. Like, it was just the most incredible, experience. And really, he only required like a few things, is that, that you show up, that you participate. And then also you would bring snacks, because at that time, this is like before COVID. So, everybody, had to bring like, snacks, and it was very, very, interactive. And it wasn't.
This is before it even was in Stanford. You're saying this was it when it was.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't even at Stanford. Yeah, it was actually at his house for about. I think it was like for about maybe a little over a year, and then he shifted to the Stanford Medical Center, and then I think after we ended up leaving and moving to Colorado in 2010, I kind of lost contact with everyone, and then it wasn't until like maybe about 3 years ago where I think I came across the Facebook post with Angela Crum, and Dr. Joe Levitt, where they were
Mhm.
talking about all these trainings. And I didn't even realize there was this huge virtual Team CBT community, because at that time it was just called Team. It wasn't called Team CBT.
Right.
And then I, I started participating in some of these virtual trainings. And then that's how I came across, Angela Poach's group, her
Mhm.
Famous Monday group. You got the
Yes.
Famous Tuesday group, but, I feel like she has the Famous Monday group. And so that's how I got here right now.
That's a great,
Yeah.
great story. I love how, it started, way back then, and now kind of getting reacquainted. You've kind of gone through the training, obviously, more and more. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how, team has kind of impacted your practice and your work with the clients.
Yeah. So I would say that, I think it's impacted my practice in so many in different ways. One thing I love about team is actually like the certification process. I feel like it's really caused me to kind of push myself, because if, for people who are not familiar with the team certification, they have like a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and you have to meet these certain, objectives, such as, co-facilitating trainings, doing consultations, being a small group leader. And I know, and one thing that, Dr. Burns always talks about is that, the more that you teach these principles and these concepts, it makes you a better therapist. And so I feel like that's probably like the single number one thing that's really impacted. It's immensely, increased my clinical skills in terms of, working with clients.
Yeah. And for our viewers, Sean's referring to the Feeling Good Institute. There's a plethora of trainings that allow clinicians to kind of move up from level 1 all the way through varying levels of becoming through deliberate practice a better clinician and trainer as well. And I'm curious, I don't know if you have like a specific client or story where somehow this can illustrate how this impacted.
Absolutely. I guess something that kind of comes to my mind is that, I think, utilizing like the team process and model is, really impacted like my confidence, with clients. And I feel more able and more prepared to really support them. And it kind of makes me think about, I had a client about 2 or 3 months ago, and he, we had our little free consultation, and I was asking him like, what would you like help with?
Yeah.
And I remember him, he told me like, I need help with depression and anxiety. I think he had sleep problems, relationship issues, work stress, and then I think it was even like childhood trauma. And I think prior to team, I think I would have just been completely overwhelmed, like not knowing like what direction to go in. And I feel like team kind of gave me a, kind of a roadmap, with this particular client. And so, after, of course, doing the testing and, empathizing and, kind of validating all his concerns and what he was experiencing, one of the powerful things about team that I did with him is the whole concept of specificity. I had to, explain to him, I'm like, hey, all these issues that you're struggling with, they're all equally important. But one of the things that we like to kind of hone in is on one issue. And the purpose of that is that the more, if you have kind of mastery over one problem area, it's easier to kind of, resolve some of those other areas. And so the area that he actually chose was the kind of like the childhood trauma issue. And so we, we focused in on that, did, positive reframing and, in the, of course, in the recovery circle, identifying the distortions, examining the evidence. And I think it was about maybe like 6 or 7 sessions, he was, recovered from, many of the struggles that he was dealing with. And then the interesting thing is that we never even had to shift to like the other issues, because I feel like there's kind of like a domino effect. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's like once he was able to kind of overcome some of those traumatic issues that like the depression, went to a 0, the anxiety, 0, his sleep quality was a lot better. And even with the relationships, what was interesting, I remember him telling me this as we were going through the brief mood survey. He was saying actually his relationships had not really changed per se, but he wasn't as disturbed by them anymore. And so it even impacted that area as well. So
no, that's so cool. It's such a great example of the power of specificity, right? That and kind of what helps us get away from the endless talking that counseling can sometimes become with all those problems you were mentioning. But if you hone in on one specific problem, and of course, I'm sure you got one moment in time, you were able to, he was able to accomplish so much, and not just in that one sphere. That's a great story. So let's maybe turn to this. So many great questions we could probably ask you, but I always like to ask, those who come onto our show, because team, of course, not only affects us professionally, giving us a framework, like you said, a roadmap to work on, but I know it's affected me personally, and I imagine possibly you as well. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how team has affected you personally.
It's I think it's I think how it's impacted me or affected me personally has been kind of in my interactions with whether it's family, friends, colleagues, and of course, clients. But I find it especially useful, when it comes to my lovely wife, my spouse. Just yesterday, we were just talking before the meeting about the Tuesday group. I actually brought an issue where we were doing a relationship journal, and I was explaining how these 5 secrets of effective communications literally helped me to kind of neutralize some tension that me and my wife were having about a week and a half ago. And I'll share that briefly. It was so about a week and a half ago, my son had gotten, he was feeling sick. He had these kind of stomach issues. And to the point where he had to stay home, and so he stayed home. I'm feeding him soup, liquids, all these kind of things, and then by the end of the day, he was kind of getting back to his normal self, and he was jumping around playing games, and he runs to me while I'm working. He said, "Hey, daddy, can I want some Chipotle? I'm feeling really good," and I didn't want to think too much about it, and he told me he was feeling good. And so because he literally asked us for Chipotle about at least a minimum of like 5 days a week.
Yeah, well, you're a good dad. You want to take him there.
Right, exactly. And so I got, I ordered him a burrito, and around the time he was eating his burrito, my wife came in and she flipped out. Like she said, she was like, why would you give him a burrito? He's still recovering from these stomach issues. And initially, I got defensive. I got a little defensive. One thing that we call in team the defensive air. So I start saying, he's fine. I'm just trying to feed him dinner and everything. And then all of a sudden, like that 5 secrets of effective communication, especially the disarming aspect of it, I feel like is a game changer for me. I kind of took a pause back, and I was like, hey, wait a second. I need to kind of acknowledge her truth, her perspective in the situation. And, and then that's when I kind of jumped in, and I was like, you're absolutely right. Our son, he's 9 years old. I was like, he is still recovering, from these stomach symptoms. And I can imagine you're probably feeling, frustrated and, maybe upset with me and even worried, which kind of shows how much you care for him and, and how much you love him, and you just want him to see him get better. And then kind of after I did that, like literally, that whole law of opposites that we talk about, where like when you agree with that criticism, like literally instantaneously, she started to kind of calm down. She's like, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe he will be okay. And literally just an update. He did go to school the next day and he was fine. But I would not have done that without, I would have continued to just kind of, protect my ego and say like, hey, what I did was right, and that kind of thing.
Our natural instinct, of course, is to just defend ourselves. That's such a beautiful example. Sean's referring to the 5 secrets of effective communication that we often work on ourselves and of course teach our clients. And that wasn't just a masterful use of the disarm, right? Finding the truth and finding someone's truth in what they're saying, but also some wonderful multiple choice feeling empathy. And
Right, exactly.
couple, you don't need to use all 5 secrets, just the two or three really good ones. Seems like that really worked really well and changed the moment.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we were talking about last night, is that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you can, it can be a B plus, 5 secrets, and it can still get the job done in terms of creating that connection with whoever it is. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that example. I want to make sure we have a few more minutes left here, Sean. So I want to get to, I don't know how much you want to be able to share with us right now, but I know some of our listeners might have heard you on the podcast talking about one of your new projects, and maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was well, recently, like the podcast I was on with Dr. Burns, we were talking about there was a group that Amber Warner, she's a licensed clinical social worker, and she also works at the Feeling Good Institute.
Sure.
She kind of took the initiative and created this group. It's called Team Clinicians of BAD, which stands for Clinicians of Color, Black African Descent. And it's just basically a group that was started by her, and also shout out to Chelsea Dorchitz, who was also part of that process as well. She's also part of the FGI. And they wanted to kind of create a group where it's kind of a safe place for clinicians of color can kind of talk about issues that kind of impact the community, and who have similar like cultural experiences, similar lived experiences, and also can kind of serve as a resource for other clinicians of color, whether it's helping them navigate through the team certification process, or even help, most of us have a private practice, even if they need assistance with related to that. And then even lately it's been, it's been kind of, I don't know what to call it, a referral service, but like, people kind of come to us and they say like, hey, do you know any, clinicians of color who can help out my client? Because if you look at, where we're, whether you go to Psychology Today or Zenity or anything, there's such a low representation of us. And there's sometimes there's clients that really, really want to connect with like an African-American clinician. And, matter of fact, I had a guy who was referred to me, and it was like the first time he had actually had, because he told me that he didn't actually think there were any black clinicians. And he and we actually had a good therapeutic relationship, and he told me, and he was a little reluctant to tell me this, but he said like, hey, it was just a really I'm so glad that I found you. It's almost like it was like talking to my cousin almost. I mean, those are his exact words. He was like talking to my cousin, and this was the first time he'd actually gone through like a full treatment, because before he might go to like maybe a session or two, but then he would just stop. And and there's kind of evidence to kind of back that up too, kind of giving
a lot of research on that.
The mistrust, and and not just this area, but medical area, and where there's a kind of a reluctance. And so we want to just kind of make it, again, make it a safe place where we can do what we can to kind of support the Black community in that area, in that way.
Just fantastic, for being able to increase accessibility of Team CBT to that community is such an amazing thing, because you're right, there could be such a reluctance sometimes to tap into counseling and therapy. So anything that kind of removes some of the barriers or roadblocks is really fantastic. So we wish you guys a lot of success with that. Looking at our time here, I wish we could ask you so many more questions, but we'll ask you one more. We always like to end off with this final question, which is Sean, if all the therapists in the world were listening, what would be the one thing, so many probably, but what would be the one thing about Team that you would want them to know?
I would say the number one thing that I would say would be that the team model, the team process, I would say, is applicable to pretty much any approach or any modality. It doesn't matter if you're like like a cognitive therapist, a radical behaviorist, or someone who does, kind of an acceptance, mindfulness-based therapy. I feel like, team can only kind of enhance that process. I always tell people, like, if you come on board to kind of like the team community, like, you don't have to throw out, any of the stuff that you've learned. You can always, add it, because it's really like team is just, it's a structure. Like, it's just all the effective components, testing, empathy, assessing psychological motivation, and finding those appropriate methods that are kind of customized, individualized to to the client. And so I just think it's just a powerful approach that can enhance whatever you were doing prior to team.
Yeah, that resonates so powerfully. We often say, tools, not schools, and
Right.
we could embrace all, like you said, all modalities and approaches here, and a lot of that is woven into Team CBT. So just thank you so much for joining us, Sean. I wish Angela was here, but it was great to have you join us, and we'll look forward to. We'll have to have you back with Angela, but thanks for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye-bye. Yeah.